All righty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Canville, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving online information entrepreneurs throughout the US and the world. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am super excited to have my friend Deidre Sirianni on today. Welcome, Deidre.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I feel like we're so overdue. So Deidre and I first met, became acquainted really right before the pandemic, right? It was like
one month before.
I met a lot of people at that event and you were one of them. And then, the whole pandemic time warp happened where in some ways it feels like 10 years and in some ways it feels like yesterday, right? So, it's really good to be reconnecting with you. We had a great chat a few weeks ago and we were like, we need to do this. We need to make this happen. So for those of you that don't know Deidre Sirianni is an international best-selling author of the book, Turn Your Light On. She's a coach and founder of Radically Aligned Academy, where impact-driven entrepreneurs come to master their inner world, own their magic, and create freedom-based businesses so that they can make a bigger impact in the world. So that's a very short and sweet bio. Welcome, Deidre.
Thank you.
I was laughing. I was teasing her beforehand, like, I'm going to make you tell more of your story following this little bio. But that's the fun part, because your path has even changed between when you and I met and now, right? Just a few years later. Do you want to share a little bit about first the way that your business has changed and what you're up to now? And then we'll dig into a little of the backstory.
Yeah. Before the pandemic, I remember going to that event and I was so excited because I had a signature event that I was taking to different cities around the world. And at the time I was living out of a small purple suitcase and I had sparkle outfits and shorts and crop tops and bathing suits. And I was all over the place. I was in hot places. And I came to San Diego, I think it was San Diego, for this event to learn about joint ventures. And I was excited to take my event to different cities. Little did I know that just a month later, the entire world was going to shut down. And I was a coach and I've been coaching now for about 5-6 years. And I was not working with one-to-one clients anymore. I was focusing on my event-based business. So all of that changed. And how it changed for me was I realized that my high ticket offerings, I wanted to turn into group programs online so I could support more people and make a bigger impact while being able to work online. And so my business totally changed. But if I really look back on it, it's all of the things I probably could have, or now that I teach my clients that they should have in their business so that they have that freedom to work and live from anywhere. But how my business has changed, like, I just feel like I've been on a journey of constant evolution. Like, 7 years ago, I was standing in my kitchen, do a little flashback, and I was putting my fingers through my hair and I realized that something fell off. So I grabbed my phone, I raced to the bathroom, I put on camera mode, and I start angling at the back of my head, trying to figure out what's going on here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a bald spot and it's this big. And so if you're just listening, you're not watching, it was a couple inches of a circle on the top left corner of my head. And I was like, how did this happen? How do I fix it? Clearly the universe is trying to tell me something because it's going after my hair. And at that point in my life, like, my image was very important to me. So I go back to my kitchen for a moment to sit down and ground.
Well, and let's be clear that whether your image is that important, if you're a female, like, I'm just going to say your hair is always important, right?
Well, it's like really important to me.
Yeah. But it's dramatic, even if it's something not as dramatic as what you were experiencing right then.
Yeah. I was in total, like, clearly something isn't working. So I sit down for a moment to ground. And that's when I hear this voice come out of me and say, if you don't listen to your soul you're going to manifest cancer and die in a year. And
Whoa.
then I have a flashback to 5 years prior, the only other time I had ever heard this voice speak to me. And I had pink roses. I was wearing a wedding gown. I was outside. My friend Marty was playing on the guitar. The lyrics, "It's beautiful, it's true," that song by James Blunt. And I'm walking down the aisle with a big smile on my face. And I think I'm about to marry the man that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And the same voice comes out of nowhere and says, "This just isn't going to work." And I had never heard this voice before. It was inconvenient to say the least. And I thought I was doing what I was meant to do. So I shoved it down. Now I'm sitting at my kitchen table 7 years ago, and I'm like, I have 4 different types of autoimmune disease that the doctors can't help me with. I have chronic pain in my neck and shoulders to the point where my massage therapist actually fired me. She's like, "I just can't help you anymore." And I was depressed to the point of having visions of ending my life. And I had always identified as a happy person, but I wasn't. And every time I was in the room with my husband, I would contract, and I was being told who to be, how to be, what I can say, what I can't say, what I can wear, what I can't wear. And I realized that moment as I was sitting at my kitchen table, oh my gosh, I'm in an abusive relationship and my body is shutting down. Since that moment 5 years prior, I didn't listen. And so in that moment, I knew that if I didn't listen to my soul and change what was showing up so quickly, and I was in my 20s at the time, I wasn't going to be around for another year. So it led me down the path of studying deeper in the space of shamanic healing, letting go of things that weren't working, listening to the intuitive nudges, and finally getting honest with myself, having courage, and then doing the hard things and letting go of the things that didn't belong. And then suddenly, within 3 months, I healed myself of all of those things. My hair grew back. 3 of the 4 autoimmune diseases went away, at least the symptoms. Depression was gone. Chronic pain that I had for over 6 months was gone. And now I help people listen to their soul and then take their traumas, take their challenges, and turn it into their greatest gifts for humanity and business. So if we go back 7 years ago, that moment was when everything changed for me.
So powerful. And having an event, right? People would call it clairaudient event that you recognized from before, right? I wonder how many people are sitting here thinking to themselves about something like that they've ignored or shoved down or pushed to the side, right? Really, really powerful. I had a clairaudient event in college that was really powerful. I was getting ready to take my friend. Well, we were studying really late into the night. I think there was a final the next day. And the funny thing is, this was a small town in Utah, like not a particularly threatening place to live or be. And, but it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I just had this voice, and it was like so clear, like, you're going to be driving her home tonight, right? She lived like 2 blocks from me, literally, like you could just walk in 2 minutes and be home. And when I told her that, I was like, "I'm driving you." And she's like, "No, you're not." She looked at me like I was crazy. Like, are you kidding me? I live 2 blocks from your house. Like, of course I'm just walking. I'm like, "No, I'm driving you." But I had also heard, "Get your mace." I was like, get your mace. Yeah, right. And like, I didn't even know where my mace was. Like, my mom had sent me to college with this little can of mace, like you could put on a keychain or something, right? I didn't even know where it was. And I was like, "Get your mace." And that was the part that I dismissed, right? But I still insisted on driving my friend home. The get your mace, it was just like, kind of felt like an extra hurdle, like, oh, I don't know where it is. And I just need to get her home. And anyway, so I walked her out. The way that the cars parked in front of that little house, there was like a tree in the middle. It's kind of like, I don't know, like there's a sidewalk, but then there's just all this pavement on the street side of the sidewalk, right? And cars could just pull up facing the sidewalk. 3 on this side, 3 on this side, and a tree in the middle. And I was on, my parking was like on the very far right side of all of those. So I took her home. I came back and I parked in my normal spot, walked, you know, on the sidewalk that was parallel to the house, and then turned to go up the main walkway towards our house. And it was like I walked into a brick wall. Like I had this vision of knowing not only that somebody was behind me, but like seeing it before I actually turned around and saw it, you know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was a really fast, like, especially as I look back on it and knowing what I know now around like intuition and the importance of listening to that inner voice. And, you know, it's really interesting to kind of dissect that experience and the different parts of it from the very beginning. But, you know, I had this experience of like literally feeling like I was walking into a brick wall and then turning around, and there was a man that had been hiding by that tree. And he had ducked down so that like when cars drove by on the street, even though it was late, like it was a college town, there was still some traffic intermittently. And so that he would not be seen in the light, he would just squat down, and then the cars would kind of shield him. You couldn't really see much, right? Anyways, long story short, it was all fine. I made it into the house. I called the police. They, of course, didn't get there in time to really find him.
Did he
What
see
was that?
Did he see that you saw him?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And he was not freaked out at all. He just stood there smoking a cigarette, just staring at me like there just wasn't a problem in the world. And anyway, so, and this was pre-cell phone days, right? This is the late 90s.
Whoa.
So I know when I tell my kids this story, like I got into the house, it was one of those like race, like unlock the door with a key, turn around, get it locked. And then I'm staring at him out the little window through the door, and the phone, you know, I live there with however many other girls, is like across the living room on the wall. My kids are like, what? The phone was on the wall? And when I left, obviously, to go call 911, you know, he was out of there. So anyways, but I look back at that and I'm like, what could have happened if my girlfriend had just walked out the door and walked herself home in the dark of night?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think the circumstances were enough different that we thwarted whatever was going to happen. And I don't know, you know, and if I'd had my mace, like how differently could that have gone? It's so interesting to think about. But back to your story and the fact that you recognize that voice, you were able to honor it the second time, and like hearing your journey about the illness and everything that had been happening in your body, you know, leading up to then. And, you know, I have so many questions. Like, one, how is it that we get ourselves into scenarios, right? And I think we all do this, where it's so clear. There's a point in time looking back where like, it's so clear what was happening. And when we're in it, it just isn't that clear. Right. You know, and then around like, and I don't know if it's about decision making, right? Just having the time to sit with ourselves and like be really, because I know you mentioned like get really honest with yourself, right? So we might have to dig into some more of that, because I just find the whole story fascinating and really a fascinating study of human nature, right?
Yeah. Well, I think like when it comes to love, which is something that I'm really passionate about beginning to teach in, which is like more like I've gone through so many things that I'm like, oh, that's not love. That's not love. That's not love. And I found that on my journey, and maybe you can relate to this, maybe not, but I've learned what something is based on what it's not. And like when I stepped away from my marriage, you know, 6 years ago, I didn't even realize how bad it was until I was out of it. And even then I still was like, oh, I feel better. I have more energy. I feel more confident, all those things. But I didn't realize how damaging it was until maybe in the last couple months, where I don't have anything to heal with that person. I haven't had that for years, but how it has been impacting me in the relationship space and the confidence space, because this person was always talking down to me and calling me stupid. And so even though I'm like a go-getter and I'm doing all of these things, sometimes things will come up and I'm like, where is this from? And I'm like, I think it's because I was in a emotionally, mentally abusive relationship for 8 years where I was told things. Do you know what I mean? And it was like programming my subconscious mind. So if we go back to like the relationship in general, I got out of I mean, I think this is gonna be a relationship episode, Heather. Where do you want to go?
Right. Well, at least it's a part of it. But I mean, the relationship, whether we talk about that, it's really any relationship in our life, right? That we have the opportunity to learn some of our most significant lessons.
Yeah, for me with that relationship, I got into it because I never really had someone show up so consistently for me in my life. And I thought that that's what love was. So I got into it. We did long distance for years. And the feeling, though, I think the first sign that it wasn't aligned for me was long before we got engaged, where I'd always feel anxious. I could never catch up with what he wanted or where he was going. Like I couldn't actually tune into what was true to me. So I found myself feeling anxious, or I felt like I was kind of forcing myself because this person was so confident with their conviction, with what they wanted, and us, that because I hadn't got clear enough on who I was and what I wanted, and even tuning into myself, I went along with it. And when I look back on that now, I'm like, oh, it was so obvious. But also, I think that as women, we've been programmed, of course, depending on like your upbringing and your family and all of that. We've been programmed, like if we watch television, oh, she's nervous. That means that it's butterflies, but actually, like nerves and anxiety is a sign that it actually isn't necessarily butterflies. It's your intuition saying no. So I didn't know that back then. And I was clinging to safety, consistency, and something that I never had. And then of course, when we were in it, just I kept feeling anxious. I kept feeling like, oh, well, we got engaged or we got married or we did these, but I still feel this anxiety, this anxiousness. And I think that was a sign from the beginning that it wasn't right. It couldn't catch up with it.
Yeah. Well, I think a huge part of your story that I think most people can relate to, right? Whether it's related to relationship, whether it's related to life, is like the strain that gets placed on our nervous system when, when things are out of alignment or when we're not slowing down enough to really tune in and take care of ourselves. And I think so many people have been through a recent period of we'll just call it a whole new understanding related to their own nervous systems. Right. And so I think that, from a lot of perspectives, this conversation and sharing stories about this very thing is super relevant and super timely. So we learned a lot about you, even in that short story, right? And you made this dramatic shift, and you are now really focused on helping people in business, right? Entrepreneurs essentially walk this process, right? Of tuning inwards, getting really honest, being in alignment, making choices that are in alignment so that they can create a life that they love.
Yeah.
It's a lot. There's a lot within that equation. I would love, though, to ask you, because I know you just came out with a book, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your book, Turn Your Light On?
I would love to. So Turn Your Light On, it's time to wake up to the truth of who you are and who you're meant to be. This is the work that really is a combination of the past 12 years of studying with shamans, of being deep into the space of spirituality, personality, a lot of trial and error in my own life, healing trauma, clearing past patterns, reprogramming. And essentially what it is it's a pathway to wake up to your true identity. It's an accelerated pathway to healing parts of ourselves and understanding what is true for us and what is not true for us, what is our intuition, what is fear versus intuition, all those kinds of topics.
Well, right, because so often our nervous systems are responding to something that isn't even true, right? It's like based on a wrong interpretation or an old story or something else. And I think it can make it really challenging for people to distinguish the cause, like the root cause, and like what is true. Is this based on a false belief, or do I really need to be concerned about this situation or whatever, right?
And I think it's tricky too. I was just in conversation with a friend the other day who owns a company, and someone in her organization was triggered around something that happened and was like, this was done on purpose, and you did this because this is how you feel about me. There was a dynamic that happened. And they did all of this work to show this person that no, this is just something that was wrong with a system thing in the computer. It wasn't personal, and the facts were there, but the person couldn't get over it. And because of that, they're re-triggered, re-wounded in their trauma, and they're potentially ruining a career and relationships that are aligned with where they want to go because they haven't done the reprogramming. They haven't really taken the time to understand their core traumas. And one of the gifts of this book and this system is that I really believe, I've had a few different core traumas that have happened in my life, but there's also really great things that can happen in our life that can have a negative impact on our life. People who are very, very, very successful at one thing oftentimes have had a imprint, which is similar to a trauma, except for it's a happy, excited moment that trains the system that I have to do this in order to be loved. And as a result, the rest of their life is sacrificed, their relationships, their health, whatever. So I talk about both of them in the book in a couple of chapters. And we look at the traumas as access point to our greatest gifts. It's like a diamond that has a bunch of dirt on it. And once we shine the diamond, those are the diamonds, those are the gifts that you're here to give the world. So instead of wallowing in our pain, which when I look at kind of what I've been seeing in the world, it's like feel your feelings, feel your feelings, feel your feelings. And that's important, but I feel there's a lot of projection going on in the world as far as everyone's responsible for everyone's feelings. So no one can say or do anything without offending someone. And I just don't agree with that. Whereas if we take responsibility for our traumas and what happened and we transform, we do the work that I teach in this book, then it's like, oh, now I'm here to help people. I'm here to like bring my gifts. And that's what we're really here to do. We're here to be of service. And that's what I really love about this process is it's things that I've done that have worked for me. And we talk about trauma and we also talk about purpose.
So good. You referred to the book as both a book and a system. Do you want it to give us a brief overview of the system? Is that the 4 stages piece?
Well, yeah. I mean, the system is within the 4 stages. So I'll share a little bit about the 4 stages. Yeah.
Perfect.
So there's 4 stages of turning your light on. And the first stage is your lights off. Okay. And we all have a light inside of us. Sometimes we feel super disconnected. We feel alone. We're depressed. We have disease, whatever it is. Your light's there. It's just turned off. And so it's kind of like being in the forest in the middle of the night, Heather, and you have no flashlight or your flashlight doesn't work and you're alone. You're in the dark. You hear squirrels and other animals in the bushes. What do you do? Right? Probably hang out behind a tree, back to a tree, and you're in fear. You have anxiety. You're not moving anywhere. You can't see anything clearly. So what do? You stay stuck. You stay in one location. You stay safe. So how that translates into our life is we're depressed. We feel stuck. We manifest disease. We're disconnected from our emotions. We're living in fear. We don't know what our purpose is. And we don't feel like we can move forward. What we need most in stage 1 of turning our light on in order to get to stage 2, 3, and 4 is we need to start understanding the language of the soul. The language of the soul comes through dis-ease and symptoms. I take you through a process in the book where you can actually tune in to different things that are going on with you: anxiety, fear, disconnection, physical manifestations. And through that process, your soul is going to give you a message on something that you haven't been listening to, or an action that you need to take. And from there, the next stage is the flickering light stage. And this is the stage where you have a flashlight, you're in the forest in the middle of the night, and sometimes the flashlight's on and you're moving forward, right? It's on, it's on. You're moving forward, you're feeling good, you have clarity, you know where you're going. And then suddenly, what sometimes feels like out of nowhere, boom, flashlight's off. What do? We get scared. We go back into our comfort zone. We go back into playing safe. We start feeling anxious. We step away from where we were going. We forget about where we were going. We lose ourselves, right? And we go back to that stage one. So at this stage, what we need to understand the most is we need to understand our traumas, because our traumas and also our imprints, which is the positive experiences, are very much directly connected to our subconscious triggers. So we might be going about, there was an event that I hosted years ago in Vancouver, and there were some things that happened around the experience that really impacted me in not the best way. It brought up a lot of triggers around, I can't do this, who am I? And so after that event, I was like, I can't run events for a while. I need to recover from that, because it brought up all these wounds from my past, right? So if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to this and you're like, you're going about, you're doing things, and then you opt out, you self-sabotage, you're not showing up for opportunities that are there, what it is that you want, it's because on a subconscious level, there are triggers and traumas that you're not aware of. So we need to do that recalibration, healing the trauma, understanding it, and then transforming it into our gifts. Then stage 3 is the bright light stage. And this is the fun stage, because you're like, oh my gosh, I have so much energy. I have so much momentum. There's all of these things that I want to do. But how it shows up in the physical world, just like a flashlight in the middle of the night that has no direction, you can see a meter to your right, a meter to your left in front of you, but you can't see fully where you're going. So you're kind of running everywhere, and you're doing the things in your life and business that you get the quick hits, the external validation for. You're exhausting yourself. You may have resentment towards all of the opportunities that you have. And usually what happens is that main dream, that main thing that your soul is pulling you to step into, is usually on the back burner, and you're not doing the one thing that's going to make you fulfilled. So at this stage, you need to learn how to quiet the noise, understand where you're going, trust yourself, have a mentor and people in your corner to support you in actualizing that so that you can manifest it. And then the fourth stage is the laser focus light. And that's where you know where you're going. People know where you're going. You know where you're going. People are showing up on your journey. You're in a space of synchronicity and flow, and you're in a legacy building mode, and you're on purpose, and you're doing the work that you're here to do. You're fulfilled. You know who you are, and you've done that work. So the book essentially, Heather, is like a combination of learning how to quiet the noise, clear things from the past, reprogram, understand your traumas and how they're gifts, and then how to actualize that into the work that you're here to do in the world.
It's such a great, I feel like for people who are visual, and I think a lot are, it's such a great visual depiction. I think everybody can relate probably to multiple phases of that process, right? Is it ever the case that people make it partway through and slip backwards a phase?
Yeah, it's so common. And I think that it's really about asking ourselves how much we're choosing ourselves and showing up for ourselves, because sometimes we might be like, I don't really feel like choosing myself today, or something happens that comes out of left field in our life. Maybe we lose someone, or a big life event happens, and then we step away from the things that are actually supporting us, and we can slip back. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's a winding path sometimes, not always a straight one. Well, I love the concept of quieting the noise. I feel like in modern life, there's just so much figurative and literal noise, right? All around us. Do you want to share with us a few tips for people that are listening, are like, yeah, I heard that too, quiet the noise. And I feel like life is very noisy. Where
Yeah.
do you have your clients start with that particular piece?
Yeah, so there's a few. I actually want to just open up the book right now to that chapter because I have
Mm,
takeaways in every single chapter, and I'm like, let's go into it together. The first thing really is to, one of the pieces that I do, and this is more under radical rituals, which is about setting yourself up for success.
mm,
And I talk about that in the book as well. It's really about knowing what your intention is. So if you know what your intention is before hopping on to a conversation like this, chatting with a friend or, working with a client or doing anything or waking up today, if we know our intention, it's kind of like pulling back a bow and arrow, knowing exactly where
mm,
it's going and releasing. The problem is most of us aren't actually grabbing the bow and arrow. We're not looking at where we're going and we're not doing the work, which isn't a lot of work. It's just
mm,
about getting clarity and taking a few moments and then pulling it back and releasing. So having an intention is so key for deciding the direction of your day and helping you recognize what the noise is. So if I know that my intention, I do this every single day. I've been doing this for 5 years, Monday to Friday, sending a friend a voice note every single day, Monday to Friday, not every day, for 5 years.
mm,
And I answer these 4 questions. How do I want to feel? Because I get to choose. And if I don't feel that way, I can remind myself, right? Get back on track. How do I want to show up? This is the energy that I bring. This is the expression. Do I want to show up with energy? Do I want to show up with focus? The third one is, what am I committed to? What is something that I really want to make sure I'm committed to? Maybe today it's finishing that project or being really present with people, whatever that is.
mm.
And then the fourth one is, what's my desired outcome? And if I'm able to answer those 4 questions at the start of my day, then I know, and I write it down or I say it to someone, I know that I'm more likely to start to quiet the noise and actualize that.
Yeah, it was such a great response. Really, the noise can be anything that is not in alignment with your right path, right?
100%. So
Mhm.
I have actually an exercise. I'm just going to open it to a random page. So this is a good one. So one of the things that I do with a lot of my clients is we write down 2 lists. One is a joy list. These are all of the things that you love to do. Like for me, I love music. I love singing. I love dancing. I love spending time with my cats. I love yoga. Like I just write down all the things I love. I love teaching.
Mhm.
Get me teaching. I won't stop, Heather. You'll have to be like, stop talking, D. That's enough. But just like I love teaching. So it's like, what do you love? And then there's the other
Mhm.
list. What are the things that you have to do and the things that you feel obligated to or that you just do because you've always been doing them? And you just like brain dump all of those. And then you
Mhm.
ask yourself the question, who was I when I said yes to this obligation? Who was I? What was my mindset? What were my belief systems? Okay. Is this serving where I want to go and how I want to feel and who I want to be? Or is it blocking me? Is it weighing me down?
Mm,
Or is it a boat with no engine? Right?
mm,
Can I delegate it in business? Is this something I can delegate? Is this actually bringing results? Or is it something that I'm doing because I think I should be doing it? And if it's a should, or it's a weight, or it's outdated or outdated belief system, you crossed off the list, you have a conversation and you release that. And you just do that with everything. Do I delegate? Do I release? Do I, have an agreement to end it at a certain day? And suddenly that obligation list or the things that we do to fill our time gets a lot shorter. And then we can
mm.
spend more time plugging into the joy, which actually is the fuel for the results in our business and our life. So that's an exercise that I love to do.
Oh, so good. I mean, I'm even starting though, when I think about some of the folks coming out of the pandemic that I know that are like, I don't even know what I enjoy doing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like they would even maybe have a hard time making the joy list.
Yeah.
And I know plenty of folks, even starting this year, that are like, I'm having a really hard time digging in.
Yeah. hmm I would say to anyone who's not sure what your joy list is, I used to not even know what I liked. Up until
Yeah.
maybe like 5 or 6 years ago when I went through that transition in my life, because I was just doing the things that my partner wanted to do and who I thought I should be. Like I really was disconnected. And what I found was the more I stopped doing the things that felt heavy, the more energy and capacity I had to do to explore. And then just going and doing
Mm,
something new every week. It's like, okay, this week I'm going to go for a hike. You know what? Next week I'm going to try that dance class. You know what? I'm going to try guitar lessons. Like just try a bunch of things, try all of them on and make time for it and then see what sticks and let go of what doesn't. Because I never thought I would be into music. I never thought I would be into writing. And those are two of my favorite things to do. Right.
right? Yes. Well, and I think, it's so great, even this concept of just allowing yourself to explore, because different phases of life, I think, allow for different expressions and different things that we enjoy to come out. Like you said, that you may not even have known if you haven't done it before, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And just giving
Yeah.
ourselves permission to not be perfect. I think as we get older,
Mm,
we have this belief system of like, oh, I'm not naturally good at that. So it's
can't
not
do it unless I'm already good at
bad.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Give yourself
Yeah.
permission to be a goof and not have it all figured out.
Oh, it's such a great reminder. I remember going to my son's recital. He completed his first year of ukulele lessons, and
Ooh,
yeah, it was so cute. Had to go to a little recital and perform, and all the teachers through this, musical group brought their students there, and so they were all different. There were vocalists, there were guitarists, there were pianists. Aiden played the ukulele. Anyways, I just remember thinking how much courage it took for every little kid that got up there, especially the vocals. Like I remember thinking like that takes real courage, to
yeah.
stand in front of a group of people you don't know as a little kid and like sing a song. And I remember actually thinking like, would I even have the courage to do that now, to like force myself through like singing lessons and get in front of people and say, like, I couldn't answer the question. Like, I don't know if I have that kind of courage. But it actually was a really fun mental exercise around like, what would I want to do? What calls me to the point of overcoming that fear with courage, because it's so enticing, right? To go
Mhm.
do. And I think that can be an easy thing to get away from as an adult.
Yeah, I mean, even with vocal lessons, I started singing last year and I remember being like, I want to get into singing. And then my first voice lesson, I was like, "Ah," like I was like a dog with like your tail between the legs. Like I was just like shut down. And it took
Mm.
so much time and courage and practice to relax, to open up. And I think that, and now I'm excited because I'm writing my own music, I'm doing my own songs, and I'm hoping to perform in the next year in
That's
front of like a live
amazing.
audience. But I really sucked. It was really scary. But that's part of everything. That's part of entrepreneurship. That's part of writing a book. That's part
Mm,
of most things, right? You gotta
yeah.
just be okay with the awkwardness at the beginning to get to the good stuff.
Oh, totally. Well, and maybe this ties in actually to the question that I wanted to ask next, which was, what do you see being the biggest barrier for people as far as like walking that path and up leveling to the, because you never get there, right? There's always like
Yeah.
a next step, a next step, a next step. What do you see in your work with your clients tending to be the biggest barrier?
Mm. Oh, well, I'm thinking specifically of a couple of things. One of them, I think it has to do with sales. And sometimes we can have this idea, or people have an idea around money and sales and putting themselves out there that they're going to look stupid or no one's going to buy
Mm,
or this isn't going to work. And I was just coaching a client of mine recently when she was launching her first signature program. And she was like, whoa, didn't want to do the work because it was scary for her and she already has an established business. And I was like, I want you to do
mm,
these things. And she did them. She wanted to quit because it was new to her. And then she had a $28,000 week, her biggest financial week ever. And she's like, oh my gosh, Dee, this works. And it's because I was there beside her, like saying, keep going, keep going, keep going, just do the things. And sometimes we need a cheerleader. I know I do.
yeah.
And so I think sometimes we have this idea that something's not going to work because we really just have a fear of looking stupid or fear of success. So I would say the biggest block is fully going in on something that you don't know is going to work. Like, I know my processes work because I've done them, but I think the biggest barrier is most people will be like, oh, I'm going to put a foot into the pool or into the water. And
Just
from
test that out.
yeah. And then from there, I'm going to decide if I want to or not. So I think the biggest barrier with this is probably with love, with everything in life. It's, are you actually all in and doing the full process, or are you telling yourself that it didn't work for you, or blaming other people, or not taking responsibility? And then you're investing in all these programs, all these things, not getting results. But really, the truth was, you never actually went all in. So yeah, I would say not going all in, not trusting in the process. And until you go all in and you follow the process, you're not going to know if it works.
Yeah.
I think people give up too quickly. That's it. That's the answer.
Well, man, I mean, that feels like a whole topic we could dig into, right? Even before we went live, we were talking about clients that show up and make their problems your problems, right? And on the legal side, I obviously help with those problems. And the point that you just made around people not fully showing up for themselves. So they purchase a program, a course, whatever, they attend, 2 or 3 times in a 6-month period where they should have been attending, 24 times or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, it didn't work. I want my money back, right? Which you see a lot in the coaching and consulting space is not as in like the majority of people that come through your client, but you see like every coach or consultant at some point has an experience like this in their business with somebody just not showing up to do the work.
Yeah.
And then making it the other person's problem, right? As if somehow they should have gotten results and only showed up, 3% of the time. So, I think that's a huge one. And it's interesting because when I look at my own life, like, okay, what have I shown up to? Where have I not shown up? It's sometimes in the not showing up that our most important lessons arise. And I think, so it's like, there's no one size fits all to this, but it's about showing up to the right thing because it's the right thing. And I think a lot of times people show up to the wrong thing and they're still not getting results because it's not the right thing, right? So it's a big conversation around what you show up to and how you decide what to show up to.
Yeah. And I feel like this is also related to the people that you surround yourself with. If you're in the right environments, things happen really quickly and are great. And if you're in the wrong environments, things can feel really challenging. And then going back to the story around trauma or like how we show up, is this because I am resisting something or I'm triggered or is it because it's the wrong environment or you know what I mean? Like there's so much work to be explored there. But yeah, I love this conversation around doing the right things rather than the wrong things.
Yeah, it's that piece is just a journey. And it's I think it's really important for us to slow down and listen to folks like yourself about that going inward as well, because I think so often and doing that even with guidance, right? Because a lot of people are like, what does that even mean? I don't even know what I'm supposed to be watching for, or they get so many mixed messages, or they've told themselves this story that originated from a childhood trauma for so long, they don't know how to unwind it on their own, right? There's a lot of complexity there, even in how you do this journey, right, with support. But it's such an important one that we all continue to look at, like, am I walking the path and doing the process, or am I just on autopilot, which is why these problems are showing up, right? It's so easy to slip into autopilot, especially when we reach new levels of proficiency, right? Autopilot just like wants to take over again. And so it's really an exercise in being very intentional about how we continue to expand and grow and challenge ourselves.
100%.
And I love this because we had talked about this as well before we went live in the conversation, the difference between us intellectually doing something or trying to make something happen versus, again, getting back to this whole question around like, what is the right choice? Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of people think like, oh, I'm doing the things I'm, or I am doing my best, and intellectually they know the steps, they know, or whatever it is that they're facing. But there's a really important piece of the conversation they might be missing.
I feel like there's a couple things there. Number one, it's the energy that we bring behind what we're doing. If one of the things that we discover with those that I work with, we discover your energetic signature. And then through discovering your energetic signature, that's brought into every area of your life. So for me, I'm an energetic. So I'm energy, movement, expansion, which means that I need to be excited and have energy towards a project or a thing, like excitement. And then I will take the actions that I need to take. And then as a result, things are going to expand really quickly. So if I'm an energetic starter, but I'm trying to do things, but my energy isn't behind it, it's not going to work. I'm going to quit. I'm going to force. It's going to be challenging. So that's one of the things that we work on, because to me, it's actually the foundation of how I live my life. And when we know that signature and we incorporate it everywhere, we're like, oh, that's not for me, or that might be for me, but not right now. So we can start to make better decisions in our business and life. But as far as like the question of, are we operating from, the place of the mind and figuring things out, or more flow and soul led? One of the things, so about a year ago, I went to Mexico and I spent a few months there. And as a result, I got to meet my favorite author in the world, James Twyman. And he wrote the foreword of my book. And we've become friends. But before I went to Mexico, like a few months before then, I was like, do I go to Costa Rica or do I go to Bali? Because those are familiar and those are places that I know that I like. Okay. So it's familiar, it's in my space. So as back and forth, I'm like, Bali, Costa Rica, Bali, Costa Rica. And then I realized I'm like, I'm doing a pros and cons list. And I know that if I'm doing a pros and cons list, it ain't right. It's not the right
That's
thing,
like
right?
the telltale signal for you. Hilarious.
Yeah, like it's not, and I think that we think too much. We try to figure things out too much. So within that, I took a step back and I said to the universe, I said, okay, listen, let me know, but I need to know by this date because I'm renting out my house. Like I'm going to be gone. And then, of course, that day at the end of my mastermind retreat, a friend of mine came over, Karen McGregor, I think you know her. And she's like, I'm going to Mexico. And then I had this light bulb moment, Heather, where I was like, oh my gosh, I've been getting so many signs for Mexico, but I haven't been seeing them because I was so focused on something else. And then, of course, I go there, I meet my favorite author, opens up other opportunities. So I think the first thing is recognizing when you're trying to figure it out, to take a step back, ask for what you need, and let the answer come organically, because usually you're getting signs, you're just not seeing it.
Oh, that story about perspective is so, like, it's one of those like, boom, when you've had that happen in your life, like, oh, it was there, I just didn't see it. That's such a great example. And like, look at what a lovely outcome came from your just making that different decision, right?
And not saying that Costa Rica was wrong or Bali was wrong. I probably would
No.
have had a great time. It just wouldn't have been, this wouldn't have been it. Right.
Right. Yeah. It's about like optimizing the sequence so that we're not expending all this energy doing other things when maybe there was a better choice.
Yeah. Like, how good can it get? Like, show me how good this can get.
I love that. How good can it get? I'm curious, and out of respect for your time, this will be our last question, and then we'll invite people to connect with you. But on the energetics, I love that, like that you have a process or something that you go through to help people determine. And I don't know what you use. I've learned recently, my sister's way into like human design, and and was explaining the difference. She's a manifester, and like between manifesting generators, manifestors, right? I know that there's different modalities out there for looking at, like, do you wait and see what shows up? Do you have a lot of activation energy and you just go out in the world and make things happen? What do you have a particular system that you like or use when you're talking about like learning somebody's energy imprint?
Yeah, so I actually just look at their body and we work on like how they breathe and how they show up. And based on the
Mhm.
body and their energetic system, we don't need to do astrology or any of
Oh,
that.
got it. Yep.
So it just
Mhm.
shows within a few cycles of breath, this is how you live your life. And now this is how you show up.
Ah.
And then as soon as people hear what theirs is, they're like, of course it doesn't work. Of course that doesn't work. Of course this is the way I am. And it's within just like a few cycles of breath, tuning into a few pieces. And it's like,
Mhm.
this is your signature. Um,
Oh, fascinating. Oh my gosh. Well, I, for one, am so excited to go pick up your book and learn more. I've seen you post about it online. Huge congratulations. I know that's a monumental achievement to get that done. For folks that are listening and are like, oh my gosh, I need to go learn more about Deidre. I need to go see what she's up to in her work currently. Where would you like to send them?
Yeah, so I have my website is radicallyaligned.com. I'm
Mhm.
also on Instagram. I am Deidre Sirianni. You can grab my book, Turn Your Light On, and I have a really awesome quiz. So if you've been listening and you're like, I think I'm stage 2, I'm stage 1, I'm stage 4, and any of this has resonated, you can go to the quiz that I have that will tell you what stage you're operating mainly at in your life right now. And it also comes with a free video training and a downloadable worksheet that's actually going to share specific things that are recommended on your journey now to help you step more into your light and into your gifts. And I believe the link will be
Mm.
below.
Totally. I love that. Yes. If you're listening, pop over and check that out. We're going to share the link to her quiz, her website, her various social links over at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Find Deidre's episode. And Deidre, I'm so sorry because I think I said your last name Sirianni and I heard you say Sirianni.
You know what? I didn't hear the difference when you said it. So,
Okay.
and
Okay. Whatever, we'll just go with it. So you heard Deidre pronounce her own name the right way. There you go. I care a lot that I do that, so that's why I asked. And then I was like, wait, I actually said it wrong. Okay. So if you're listening, be sure to pop over, connect with Deidre. Deidre, it's been such a joy to see you again and hear more about your journey and your story and your own shifts in your work. I love your message. I'm super excited that your book is out there in the world. What, for the folks that are listening, what final either takeaway or action step, it could be a to-do, like if you want to have people go do something or just leave them with a thought, what would that be?
let me just tune in for a second and see what
Mm.
wants to come through. Okay, this is the message that's really clear is if you have something that you want to create, whether it's a book, you want to be a coach, you want to do anything, you want to move somewhere, but everyone in the world or around you is telling you you can't, or you have a history of people saying
Mm.
you can't do that, I actually believe it's a sign that you are meant for that. I've had so many people like I joked that I'm going to send this to one of my old teachers because she actually, like my English teacher was like hated all my stuff, right? Book and it's pretty good and people say I'm a natural writer, but the truth is a lot of the times your challenges and what you think you can't do are the things that you must do. So if you're getting that inkling, lean
Mm.
into it and you'll surprise yourself. I surprised myself with the book and I got incredible feedback from it. And I always thought I could never write a book because I had challenges learning and writing was my hardest. One of the hardest things for me to do. I would have all of my essays back in school in English covered in red. It was my hardest class. Me writing a book felt so
Mm.
far. But once you do it, it's like, oh, that was an initiation. And a lot of our challenges are just initiations to what is for us. So keep leaning in, keep
Mm.
showing up, get the support, and believe in yourself.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I mean, the phrase that you just said, a lot of our challenges are initiations. It's so beautiful. Such a great way to reframe, and for those of us that are in a challenge right now to reframe that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Deidre, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so happy that you came and shared today.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.